With that, we want to turn to a headline from closer to home here in the Carolinas. We told you on Friday how a convicted dogfighter out of Gaston County had just received a sentence, and it sounds like it's going to be between 7 to roughly 15 years in prison, which is something that we don't always see with these dogfighting cases. In fact, some of you who have been covering or following our coverage here on Live Impact News know that there was a big case out of Charlotte where we had somebody who pleaded guilty to dozens of felony and misdemeanor charges of animal cruelty and dogfighting and ended up with probation. And there was a ban for 5 years on that person from owning animals, but after which that person could very well own dogs once again. We want to speak with the district attorney out of Gaston County. We have Travis Page joining us here right now on Live Impact News. Thank you so much, Travis, for your time. We appreciate it.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Vanessa. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, we were really interested in speaking with you about this Rico Pagan case. This was out of Gastonia. 4 counts felony dogfighting, 13 counts animal cruelty. And as we mentioned, the fact that there will be prison time and there will be restitution that is paid to Gaston County and to Humane World for Animals for their efforts in trying to care for these dogs after they were seized from Mr. Pagan's care. This is kind of unusual to us in the sense that we don't always cover prison sentences for these dog fighters. Can you tell us if there was something, specific about this case, or is it just the way that y'all prosecuted it?
So I can talk about a couple of things. I think, we try to be aggressive with repeat offenders. And so first and foremost, the individual that we prosecuted last week, Rico Pagan, he had a history of dogfighting that went back as early as 2008. And in fact, he had, 25, 30 felonies that he had been charged with, practicing veterinary care without a license, which a lot of dog fighters, that's one way to go after and prosecute dog fighters, is to kind of go after them on those grounds as well. But he had a history of dog fighting. He's been doing it a long time, and so he earned the active prison sentence that he received last week. And one of the things that Judge Edie Williams pointed out when she sentenced Mr. Pagan is that she wondered how many dogs between 2008 and 2025 that he had also abused and neglected. And so that's something that obviously we had considered as well. And then also, while Mr. Pagan was out on bond and waiting for trial, he picked up new charges in 2025 related to dogfighting. And so that's why we were aggressive in what we saw. I think the only other active sentence really that I can think of, and it's the case that we talked to our jurors about a lot in jury selection because it's probably the most famous case, was the Michael Vick case. In the Michael Vick case, I believe he received roughly 2 years in prison. That was a federal prosecution. And one of the things that we heard from the Humane Society, and they played a huge role in this operation in helping us take care of the animals on Mr. Pagan's property and then also relocate them. And one of the things that they said that this is one of the best results that they've seen in state court throughout the country. And of course, they're involved in multiple jurisdictions throughout the United States. So we take a lot of pride in that, and we hope that we can set the tone and set an example with Mr. Pagan's case for other dog fighters in the area.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting to hear that take from Humane World for Animals because, I mean, just initially when I reached out to you about wanting to have you come on our streaming program and talk about this, it did to me feel like this was, I don't want to say unique situation, but it was notable. It caught my attention in the sense that it did seem like this was potentially a pretty successful case that ended with, punishments that would be rendered that could potentially deter someone from wanting to do this again. I know you talked about, and I appreciate you doing this, kind of going into the weeds about trying to pursue somebody on performing their own veterinary care, if you will, without a license. We know from some of our reporting here previously on how dog fighters can sometimes operate. And this will play into some of the evidence that gets seized in this case. Probably, you've got somebody who might fight dogs for a living, and you have dogs that get injured. And usually some of these dog fighters will have medical supplies on their property where they're trying to administer their own care so that they can continue to fly under the radar and avoid having to take an injured animal who's injured in a dogfight to an actual veterinarian. Can you talk about some of the, evidence that was seized in this case that really pointed to dogfighting, and maybe paint it in the way that folks at home watching might know what to look for if they ever need to report suspicions of a dogfighter in their neighborhood?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that drew police to this area and really got them honing in on Mr. Pagan's property here in Gastonia was there were two deceased, decomposed animals that were found probably about 2/10 of a mile, about 1,000 feet from Mr. Pagan's property. The animals that lose in dogfighting, the animals that don't have what we call game, that can't participate and maybe don't want to participate against their will. Those animals, as we heard from the Michael Vick case and other dogfighting situations, they're discarded. They are worthless to a dogfighter, and so they will discard them like trash. They may electrocute them, they may execute them with a firearm, but they're not going to keep the dogs around. They're not going to take them to the animal shelter and turn them in, because again, like the point that you just made, Vanessa, is that a vet, when they know what to look for as far as scars and dogfighting wounds, and if someone brings an animal into the vet, all of a sudden a red flag's going to go up. They're going to report it to the local law enforcement and send someone out to this person's property. So that was the first thing. I mean, if you see deceased animals in your neighborhood off the side of the road or in the woods, property where you live, especially if they're pit bull terrier mix, that breed, then I think that should be the first red flag that should go up for you. And so we had two animals that were found close to Mr. Pagan's property, and that started it for us. And then animal control goes out, and they have a series of visits in May of 2021. And so some of the things that they're looking for. So again, the breed, American Pit Bull Terriers, depending on how they're raised, they can be really good dogs, really good pets. And they are the common breed that a lot of dog fighters will use. The other thing is the manner in which they're restrained. So we notice heavy logging chains in this case. The logging chains, one, they keep the animals tethered and keep them separate and apart where they can't interact with one another. But they also allow the dog fighter to strengthen the animal's neck and make them a stronger competitor. There's also weighted collars that are used and that we found on Mr. Pagan's property. And we were planning to have the jury come in and hold these chains, the logging chains, hold the weighted collars. They were cruel just in and of itself, how these dogs were being restrained or tethered in the backyard. The medicine, you touched on that. Again, a dog fighter cannot take his or her animals to the vet, because the vet's going to see the scars, they're going to see the marks on the front paws, and they're going to probably see the low body score conditions, the malnourishment that a lot of dog fighters, again, these are devices for them to make money. They're not animals. They don't see them as having feelings. They have one use for an animal, dog fighters do, and that is to profit and make money and to entertain. And you're showing a couple of the photos there. Again, these animals, they spend a minimal amount of money to keep these animals up, do the bare minimum to keep them alive until it's time to get ready for a fight. And that's when they start to deworm the animals, feed them more, and ramp up the training. We saw sleds. A common defense that dog fighters will say the reason they have a sled is for weight pulling, which I think is pretty bad in and of itself. But what they will do is they will take a chain, wrap it around the dog, and have it pull like a sled, and they will stack weights. It had a pole sticking upright, to where Mr. Pagan or his associates could stack weights and force these dogs to go around the backyard with weights on the back of the sled to strengthen their legs, strengthen their muscles. Other things that we saw flirt poles, we saw brake sticks. Brake sticks are devices used when the animals lock up. A dog fighter is usually in the ring with their animal, and so they don't want to reach down and break and pull the dogs apart because they risk getting bit themselves, and so they will actually use a stick to pry the dog's mouth off another dog. The syringes, the medications, vaccines, again, they can't see a vet, and so you're going to see a lot of those at the scene of a dog fighting. If you go over to someone's house and they've got 10 or 15 pit bulls in the backyard, and you start to see syringes, supplements that you might give to racehorses. There was one in particular called Red Cell. That was an iron supplement. It's common for greyhounds, for racing, horse racing. He had some of that he was providing to his animals. And I think the most notable piece of evidence that we seized are paraphernalia. We actually had a plaque in this case, and there was an animal, when they win a dog fight, they're called a champion. If they win 5 dog fights, they're called a grand champion. And in Mr. Pagan's garage, there was a plaque on the wall for grand champion, Trick Daddy, name of the dog, and then it had 5 numbers on it, and they ranged from anywhere from 140, 150 to 250. No punctuation, just the number 250, 150. And what we learned is that those numbers indicate the length of the fight. And so for 250, for example, that meant a fight had lasted 2 hours and 50 minutes
Oh my goodness.
before the other dog either died or gave in. And so those are the sorts of things I think your viewers should be on the lookout for. Again, minimal food, minimal water, minimal shelter. This is a business. They're trying to make money off of it, so they're going to minimize their cost. This isn't about the care and well-being of an animal. You and I, we might make sure that our dogs always have food in their bowls, always have water, have shelter. Your typical dog fighter is not going to do that. They are a method for them to make money, and that's it.
No, I mean, we've talked about here in the past here on WCNC Plus, even speaking with Gaston County Police before on just in general, dog fighting operations. It sounds like there is a strong tie between dog fighting and other crimes, including, domestic violence, trafficking in drugs, guns, even human beings. So, I mean, we certainly, especially as you've painted the picture here with this specific case, can see how not only is it a cruel and disgusting practice, but also does go hand in hand with other illegal activity. Can you talk about just the importance of not only wanting to send a message about well-being of animals, but also just crime in general and wanting to crack down on all elements of crime?
Absolutely. So I think first and foremost, if you're getting in the dog fighting business, you have to be some type of sociopath. There has to be something wrong for you to think that this is a suitable way to treat another living, breathing animal. And so folks that are that disengaged, who lack the ability to feel, of course, they're going to be more likely, I think, to abuse their spouse or partner, to engage in other violent acts. One of the things that, again, dog fighting, it's about the money. And so they're looking for any other way for them to make money while the dog fighting is going on. And so it's not unusual for us to see, illegal gambling. We had a confidential informant in this case that the prize pool could get as much as $70,000 for a dog fight. That is one fight, $70,000 potentially, and that's here in Gastonia. I can only imagine for other fights and in other areas what a purse might bring. So there's illegal gambling, but there's also drug trafficking and firearm trafficking. We find guns at these scenes, at dog fights. We also see a lot of illegal drug activity. Mr. Pagan actually had some marijuana plants on his property where he was trying to grow his own marijuana there in his backyard. That was, ultimately this was a dogfighting case, but that was hand in hand with what we see nationwide with dogfighting investigations is illegal drugs and firearms. And so, yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's not just dogfighting, but there's a host of other crimes that go hand in hand with dogfighting. And they certainly, if they're willing to pit dogs against one another, they're also willing to break the rules in other areas of the law.
As far as, a priority, I feel like we are starting to see more crackdowns on dogfighting operations here at WCNC Charlotte, because we are so close to the South Carolina, of course, line. We cover North Carolina and South Carolina, and I know even in South Carolina, SLED, it has its own dogfighting task force where they pay particular care in that task force, in that department of looking into these cases. But it does really feel like, at least anecdotally, that we're seeing more of these cases. Do you feel like there's maybe a change in how much these cases are being pursued or looked at or handled? Or, I mean, I'm fully open to the potential, too, that there is no change and maybe we're just happen to notice more cases. But I'm just curious your take on the prevalence of these cases. Have priorities shifted with law enforcement? What are you seeing?
So I can speak for Gaston County, and I think, I think dogfighting has always been around. There was talk that this was something that Mr. Pagan learned from other family members, and another family member got him into it, and so it was generational to an extent. And so it's been around. I think we're just getting smarter and smarter about picking up on it, and we're educating ourselves. This case here in Gaston County, Mr. Pagan's case, this was the first one where our police department really partnered with outside agencies and Humane World for Animals, specifically Jeanette Reaver, who is one of the foremost experts in dogfighting in the world. Our folks have been getting trained on this, and so they know what to look for. The things that I just talked about, those are things that I've learned in the course of prosecuting this case. And our law enforcement is learning as well as we're going out to these scenes. And so I can't say that we're seeing more of it because more of it's happening. But I can tell you that we're getting better at finding it. And technology is giving that as well. With criminals use cell phones, we're able to get into cell phones and go after location data and messaging and bets and Venmo history and all these things that now criminals are doing that we have access to. We also have drones, and so we can get a confidential informant or informant give us probable cause to fly a drone over a property to where we can now look and see a dogfighting operation or where a kennel is being staged. And so I think we're just getting smarter, and I think it's always a cat and mouse game. I think the dogfighters will adapt to the technology that we're using as well, and we'll have to continue to improve and train and get better at what we do. But I do think our law enforcement, they're learning at what to look for. And one of the great things, you talked about the judgment that we got, and yes, we get restitution. Yes, we send him to prison. But one of the other things, too, I think that is underrated is that all the contraband that was seized in this operation, it will either be disposed of or the county police can actually keep it. And so, the brake sticks, the flirt poles, all of these things that we seize, the paraphernalia, we can use that to train the next generation of officers who are going to be going out to these dogfighting calls. And so this is a textbook example for how we collaborate, work together, and what to look for. And hopefully it will allow us to find other dogfighting operations.
Is there anything that you'd like to leave our viewers with here, either about this topic, about the message that you hope it sends to the community, anything about this case, or just the general topic?
Absolutely. So, I think more than anything, I want your viewers and the public to know how much we care. The job of the district attorney is, again, a lot of it is to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. And so in homicide cases, that is for the deceased. But in dogfighting cases, it's for these animals. And they're hardly ever given a platform to where maybe it's an ASPCA commercial or some type of charity event to where we talk about these things. But I think it's important for a society to stand back and take measure of how we treat the least of us. And those are the most vulnerable in our community. And I hope that um, that this verdict or this decision and this judgment, the prison sentence that Rico Pagan received, I hope that's a nice message to the community that we are looking out for those that are least vulnerable.
Travis Page, Gaston County District Attorney, thank you so much for your time and appreciate you sharing this update on this case. And hopefully, yeah, it is something that maybe at the very least has a dialogue that it's bringing up in the community, because this is a situation I think not a lot of people know about. Doesn't always get big headlines, but I think it is something that we need to be talking about more and more. So I'm glad to see how this has transpired and having you on to kind of explain some more insights. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.